Turtle, can you not? Turd. Hi, Kay. Can you hear me okay? Hello, hello. I'm gonna try to let a few more people get in here. One of my cats is trying to be an absolute butthead, so don't be surprised if I have to yell at her or if she yells back. Hi, Turtle. Speak of the devil. Thank you, Danny. I don't think so, but... Say hi, Turd. I hope everyone knows that Turtle is rubbing all over my iPad. Can I help you with something, Turd? Okay, so why are you here? Are you gonna teach? I don't think you know nothing about nothing. What? I have to be nice to you. I'm on live. I can't call you names. Meh, meh, meh. Go away. Turtle, you have horrible timing. I cannot sit here and pet you. I need my hands. Go bother your brother. Bone? Bone? Hello, I think we're getting a nice little crowd in here. Bone? Turtle only has one trigger word. No idea why. So for everyone who's here, I got a quick little story for you. My mom works in a doctor's office, and they were playing Encanto on the TV for the kid who was in the waiting room. And the kid was pointing to each character and saying their name and describing their powers. And the parents were like, oh, that's cool, you know every character's name. And the kid points to the TV and says, except her, I can't remember her name, I just call her the lady with the nipples. And the parents had to ask the child to clarify, and it was established that the child meant freckles. And that kid is going to be reminded of that for the next 20 years. Like, both parents had to leave the room. They were laughing so hard. I know I said a few things like that when I was a kid. My mom still doesn't let me forget. I want to know who the heck the lady in Encanto with the nipples is. Didn't know Disney got so R-rated. Sorry if I sound a little bit stuffy. My sinuses have been clogged like crazy today. I woke up feeling like the wrong side of a bag of poop. And Turtle's here to just remind me of that. Yeah, Danny, it was actually your comment that reminded me of that about anatomy tippies. Fair point. Fair point. Hello. Some of you guys have a different Twitch name than your Discord name, so I'm sorry if I don't know everybody. But I think it's probably safe to get started. Decided it'd be easier to record my screen than constantly be reaching around a screen. So if I post it online without the Twitch part, I'll probably post it as kind of like a slideshow format. So I tried to stick with that format. Shut up, Turtle. So, I'm horrible and I love jokes. So part 1 is called No Head. where I sketched out this little head here, just as kind of a show of what it's about, I guess. So on this part, I took a picture of my face, and I wanted to talk about some of the guidelines that have kind of been helpful to me. Is everyone still able to hear me nice and clear? Yes, head. Turtle. Bone. Cool. Cool. Alright. Oh, go away. So anyways, I took this picture yesterday because I saved all my lesson planning for the last minute. And I sketched out this sketch in my head. And the first thing I started with was the circle, which I'm going to use black to kind of stand out here. I think I didn't know what I was doing. So I did the circle, and then I did the jawline. And that's the most primary thing that most drawing books will teach you. The center line down the face, if the face is directly squared in the picture, not, the head's not up or down or 3/4 view or whatever, you got that center line. And then this line, the drawing books always talk about as well, which is the center line of the circle. And what the drawing books always failed to teach me is I always thought that this was where the eyes went. And take that for what you will. That's going to haunt my nightmares. But the thing is, that actually makes the face way too long, or makes you misjudge where the jawline should be and makes the face too short. This is actually the eyebrows line, where the brows should go. And that is the first tip that I'm going to give you, is that is where the eyebrows go, not where the eyes go. That'll help your proportions a lot. And another thing that some anatomy books have taught me and some have not is the ears. You can't see the ears very well when someone's face on, but the ears go over here on the sides, and where they line up is the top of the nose right here and the bottom of the nose right there. And if I bring this part up, you can see you got the eyeballs, which are usually about roughly the size of a quarter, and my eyes have a nice advantage to them, where my eyelids very perfectly encompass my eyeballs, so you can very much see the shape of my eyeball. You can very much see how round it is and how big it is, and it is roughly the size of a quarter. And you can see how my nose lines up with my ears. And then another tip I want to give, because I don't really have eyebrows to show you guys, and that's just natural, unfortunately. You got the edge of the nose usually lines up with the inner eyebrow, and your eyes typically, unless somebody has a very, very narrow nose and unusually close together eyes, usually the eyes are about that far apart. Something like three or four fingers is what I've heard. And from nostril to nostril. And the mouth, also typically the edges line up with the center of the eye. But this is all a lot of things to go over. These are just some tips that I'm giving you to start with. So next thing I'm going to look at is on this side, I trace my face, trace my face in that photo. And on this side, I recreated it using the guidelines from up here. So you can see the similarity. I know that I have a bump in my nose. I know that I have a very round nose. I know I have very thin lips. And I know that I have this chin. And I also know how baggy my eyes look. So those were the things that I knew to include. I also knew the approximate location of the ears. And I also know that it's usually about a 4-finger width from the eyebrows to the hairline. And again, things that you learn over time and you pick up. Realism has always been my sort of forte, I guess, because even in elementary school I was trying to draw realism. Like the picture that's on this thing is the kind of stuff that I would just fill sketchbooks with. It was kind of a forensic interest. I wanted to be a forensic artist. So I learned the way that the eyebrows lay. I learned the way the nostrils flare, bridge of the nose, the detail inside the eye, the curve of the lips. And don't forget that lips do curve, and this part right here between the lip and the chin oftentimes will be indented, but in some cases, like me, that is actually the opposite. I have this little bit here that the lip goes out further on the bottom and then does this weird little indent to the chin. So, it's all very different, but that's the great thing about humans is they're all unique. We all have something different about us. And, so every face is going to look different. I referenced a few models here I wanted to show. Again, I start with the circle. And then I do the jawline. And then the next part is the center down the face and the center across the face. And that's how I know eyebrows here. And then the approximate location of the nose is about that far from the chin. You know, again, it'll change from person to person, but sometimes I'll just signify the nose with a little circle or something. When I was in high school, I would do a triangle. You know, everybody has their style choices. You got the eyes, you got many different shapes of eyes. And then you got the mouth. And make sure your mouth isn't too close to your nose. And also make sure it's not too close to your chin, because that would make for a very uncomfortable situation. You're either eating boogers or your face is falling off. And then don't forget that your ears are about that big. And if I want to do something like cheekbones, I'll start approximately in the middle of the ear and just do a quick line like that down. You know, you want sunken cheekbones, or do you want round cheekbones like a Native American? All of those things are possible. You got like all the different shapes of eyes. You got little curves that happen here. I mean, there's so many different intricate details of the face, and you can really age a face by adding those details. Like, voila, that is a very old person's face. And so it's just little details that you have to watch and pay attention to through observation. Just drawing random people on the street is a really great practice for that. I have another one here. This head is turned slightly down. So it's slightly down. And that line up, you got that center line, but instead of these lines being evenly spaced like they were on this head here, got a nice even spacing there. Instead, on this face, they start a little narrower down here and get a little wider up here, and that's how you line up your eyebrows besides the center line there, so you know how much space there is between your eyes. And you always got the nose, which your nostrils are going to be far less visible, if they're visible at all, at an angle like this. And again, you have so many different shapes of lips, and you know, whether or not you're going to do realism or styled or what. So that's one practice. And when I post this online, if I do this as a slide presentation or whatever, the space over here will be for you to practice on, or for me to write notes. Here's one looking slightly up. It's not a dramatic upward turn of a face, but I wanted to include this because this part down here is what tripped me up for years. When a face is turned up like this, what happens to the chin? How do you indicate that there's separation between the neck and the chin? And this little triangle here is a really good indicator. So basically what the secret is, in my opinion, is, let's say that you have a face. Draw a little face here. Okay, happy little face, but you want the chin to be slightly upturned. Okay. Well, the chin's slightly upturned, and if you leave what was the original chin line down here, it's actually a really good indicator, and you can just make that part shadow, because naturally most people don't realize that we have even just the slightest bit of double chin. If somebody doesn't have any fat between their chin and their neck, usually they're extremely skinny, or they've had like some sort of operation. So, you know, these are things, again, you can find out through observing other people, looking at yourself in the mirror, feeling around on your face. If you follow your eyes, like the corner of your eyes all the way over to your ears, you can kind of see that natural line. So that's all just keen observation. I used to have nothing better to do than to observe, but those are some tips with that. And then I also, of course, wanted to include everybody's favorite, the 3/4 face. I think many of us are guilty of doing one too many of these. But when the face is turned at a 3/4 angle, you see how, hold on, it's not going to let me write. Okay, you see how this space here is narrow and this space here is wide? That is because this eye is going to be closer to the nose, and this eye is going to be further from the nose. And that's just the angle. The face changes so much based on angle. And a couple things I forgot to talk about up here. When a face is downturned like this, the ears move with the head. So don't forget, the head is a sphere. So when the eyebrows line moves down, because the sphere moves down, so do the ears. So those ears will always line up, almost always, with the bottom of the nose and the eyebrows, or the eyes, as long as you do your line curved instead of straight. If you do it straight, it's going to be weird. And your eyes will always line up as well, even if you have it turned at a 3/4 angle. So again here, straight across, okay? And I didn't do this line as curved as I should have, but got sphere across, and it's going to be straighter down here at the bottom because of the fact that this part is closer to the quote camera, and this part is away from the quote camera. So I hope that makes sense. But again, here on the lines that line up the eyebrows and the nose and the chin, it's going to be narrow at the top and wide at the bottom because, again, this part is closer to the camera. So just think of it as the stuff closer to the camera is going to naturally be bigger. Okay? Again, I'm just doodling some chins, some eyebrows, eyelids, whatever. I can freehand a lot of this stuff just because I've done it so much. I don't expect anybody else to do that. That's just, I guess you could call it a special interest I've had over the years. But, so going back to this, how you have the narrow part and the wide part, and that's going to be the same there. The nose, I don't think I've covered anything with the nose. So the head here is neither up nor down. It is pretty much straight on aside from the 3/4 angle. And the thing about noses is my favorite detail for many, many years has always been the shape of the shadow of the nose, because the nose here is rounded, or at least somewhat rounded. So it's going to come around and around. And then to create that shadow, if you have overtop light like most situations do, it's going to cut in half right about there. And your nostril, the size and shape of the nostril, just like every other aspect of the face, can change. But that there, that's going to be where your shadow is. And in a comic setting, oftentimes you'll have shadow right under the nose. It's going to be about the same shape as the nose. And the lips will also follow that 3/4 rule, where this part over here will be a little bit bigger and this part over here will be a little bit smaller. Should have created a separate drawing layer. Alright. And then, of course, I want to talk about a little bit harsher of a 3/4 angle. You see here, you can't even really see the line that would naturally be right here. And that is because this part over here is going to be so narrow, you're not going to naturally see that line. So the eye ends right there. So if you wanted to draw that line, it would go something like that. So that's so narrow that you're not even going to see it to think about it. So I just omitted it on this one completely. But you can definitely see here, hi turtle. You can definitely see here the size difference. This is the center line, like you always have. And this is the edge of the nostril that also creates the edge of the eyebrow. And yeah, your top of the eyebrow and top of the ear, bottom of the nose, bottom of the ear, all still line up. And another thing I see people forget is the nose doesn't just lead into the eyebrow. There's the curve of the bridge of the nose. And noses, for more traditionally feminine shapes are smaller, daintier, something like that. And for more masculine shapes have bumps in them, whatever. They look all wonky. But, you got the curve of the lips. And so this one, I also included that bottom chin area because the way the head is turned, it might be considered slightly up, depending on your point of view. And you can see the jawline, and you can see where that area of natural fat leads into the neck, and this area would naturally be in shadow unless for some reason it's being lit by underneath. And then, of course, I had to talk about profile views, because if you're not doing a 3/4 view, you're probably doing a profile view. So of course, you still have your lines. You got your skull, and then you got your jawline. And then it gets a little bit more complicated from there, because you don't normally have a center line. But you can still do this line going up, which will show the edge of the nostril. And the eyebrows are going to be slightly forward in this event, but make sure that your eye is not more forward. It needs to be at least this far back, otherwise it's going to be rolling off the edge of the nose, because you have to remember the bridge of the nose is still here. This is all going to be nose, and that's why you don't want to bring the eye more forward than that. I know a lot of animes are guilty for doing that kind of stuff, so if you're trying to have more realistic anatomy, that's what this event is for. And then, you also have your nose, and then you have your lips, which you have to remember, unless the person has a severe under or overbite, and I mean really severe, like a troll, their lips should be shorter than the edge of their nose. And your lips go in, out, in, out, in, out, and then you'll always have another out for the chin, with the exceptions of someone who doesn't have a chin or whatever. But make sure you follow those mountains and valleys to include all of that. And you still have just the slightest showing of that little jawline shadow there. And then getting into the neck, there's that strong muscle cord going on that most people see, especially if it bulges out when you're mad or whatever. That usually starts about right behind the ear and goes down like that. You got things like Adam's apples, which look kind of like that. So, it's observation, it's playing around, it's feeling and getting familiar with your own face. If you have somebody who you love who lets you familiarize yourself with their face, you can do that as well. There's tons of reference pictures online. And I'm going to take a quick pause if anybody has any questions before we get into another part of it. Yeah, my cat's name is Turtle. Her nickname is Turd. I haven't had to talk that long for a while. Does anybody have any questions or anything that they'd like to add? Anybody want to grab a glass of water or anything? Thank you. Thank you, little human. Okay, your drawing is really awesome. Making sure nobody had any important messages on Discord. Alright, so I'm going to go on to the bodies part. I guess I'll do a trigger warning, fake bodies, in case anybody's bothered by thin bodies or muscular bodies or anything like that. Because fat bodies are still something I'm struggling with, admittedly, but I really like drawing muscles and stuff, and I've been into that for the last year or so. Used to only draw really skinny people. But anyways, part 2 is bodies. Another little doodle here. So, where I first learned the most useful body tips I've ever learned was when I was in the 9 fandom. I was in the 9 fandom drawing Stitch Punk fan art, and there's a tutorial that basically said to use a body shape like this. And, you know, you might call it a bean or a flour sack or whatever. I think of Stitch Punks every time I draw like that, just because that's what it's familiar to me as. So, I drew these on these models to kind of show off the general shapes I use. A lot of drawing and anatomy books will do like a box for a chest and a box for the hips, or some of them will do an oval for the chest and an oval for the hips. And I tried those for a lot of my formative years, and none of them worked for me anywhere near as well as this. And since then, I've been able to mentally map out rib cage and hips, you know, stuff like that, because my best foundation was this right here. And also a lot of the anatomy books start you off with the ball joints. So shoulder, elbow, wrist, you know, circles to symbolize joints. And that's well and good too. These days I prefer to use diamonds, because, especially on biceps, because biceps have that diamond shape naturally, and it makes it look so much more natural when you do the continuance of the arm in a cleanup sketch. The body consists of diamonds a lot more than it consists of circles. And that's why I have a lot of angular drawings sometimes, is because I really like the way that the diamonds look as opposed to circles. So, yeah, I started here, and now I am where you see me today. So here's a picture of the Stitch Punks that I use. It took forever to actually find that reference, and I didn't want to rip anybody else's tutorial, so I had to actually find a picture of a Stitch Punk. But I also wanted to include that the human body is approximately 8 heads tall. So your head, on top of itself 8 times, should be about the same as your entire body. And also your arm span should be about the same length from fingertip to fingertip of your body. So those are just a couple of fun little things based on human anatomy. And if you put one of the 3D models from Clip Studio Paint or one of the other 3D modeling studios, it will be approximately 7.5 heads tall, and it'll tell you that. It'll be like ratio or something like that. That means that it is about 7.5 heads, like that. And that would be like that. And another fun thing that I found is the fingertips typically end right around the crotch region. I'll not throw any particular terms in here to make anyone uncomfortable, but this region here between your navel and the start of your thighs is about where your fingertips end. So your fingertips shouldn't be up here. They shouldn't be all the way down here because they kind of look like a monkey when you do that. So yeah, if you put your hands at your side, you can actually feel about that's where your hands should end. I knew cheerleaders in high school who were able to wear shorts to the end of their fingertips, and their fingertips somehow stopped there. And it's like, are you kidding me? But, you do have some people who have really short legs. You have people who have really long arms. But a proportion person that's considered perfect, I guess, is, that 8-head difference, fingertips ending about there, things like that. And again, everybody's different, so, don't feel bad if your fingertips are down here, up here. There's nothing wrong with you, I promise. There's nothing wrong with your character. I'm just trying to help people be on par with the most realistic method, because this is considered average. So I broke this down into those shapes I mentioned earlier. You got the circle chest and the square hips, and from here you would be able to figure out that this is the rib cage, ribs, and this is the hips. Those hips probably lie a lot. And once you have this kind of stuff down with the circle and the rectangle, you would be able to figure out like a Speedo style shape, like a gymnast Speedo, and make that into much simpler lines. So you got outside chest, inside chest, hip, center line, and this would be about the pectoral region here. And about here would be your navel, your hips, leading into your groin and back into your hips. And I have a rough sketch over here. So you would go from this to this, this to that, and eventually you would be able to roughly freehand something like this. Another thing that's interesting to know is men's hips, or masculine hips, typically on AMAB bodies, have higher hips here. They start about the navel. And meanwhile, AFAB bodies have much lower hips, so they start about here. And something that's helpful for me was another tutorial I saw that kind of outlines some underwear. So starting about there, where the natural waist is. And please don't be like my husband. Your waist is up here in the center of your stomach. It is not down here. He had no idea about that and ordered some pants in the wrong size. So you got your waistline of your imaginary underwear. And if you have a masculine body or masculine hips, you'll bring it down like this, outline the crotch, and then to get the hips, you would do something like that, which looks like male boxer briefs, and that would be immobile. That part right there doesn't move a whole lot. It's muscle and fat. The ball jointers there. This part down here would be the part that moves around. So I'll show you again, but on a feminine body. So you got your imaginary underwear and your imaginary hips, which also the groin is going to be much shorter on that as well. And you have the same type of shape. This up here is not going to move. This down here is going to move a little bit. And this kind of is what's called boy shorts. This is muscle and fat. The ball joint is here. And again, this down here is going to be what moves. So these bend. Like, let's say this person has to spread their legs to ride a bicycle. So this part will move slightly. But it won't move very far. It'll just be a short range back and forth. This part here is what moves up and down, back and forth. And that also, might answer a question or two on why underwear is shaped the way it is, why it's more comfortable in certain shapes, etc. But, you got chest region up here, pectorals naturally end above the rib cage, the bottom of the rib cage. Even if you have a breast area that hangs lower than that, that is just excess fat on a, quote, skinny body, or muscular body, or even just small frame. This would be your natural ending area of the pectoral muscles. And they're not always square like that. Sometimes they're like that. There are some bodies that are so thin you can't even make out any pectoral muscles at all. And I don't know much about muscles. Don't ask me to name more muscles than that, because that's about it for me. But your collarbone here is kind of a swoopy shape like that. Kind of like a seagull silhouette when you're drawing like that. So, and when you have a neck area on your person, like I did not include, this collarbone is going to be where those neck muscles come from. So it's going to kind of form a natural double V there. And don't forget, there's muscles there. The neck does not come down and hit the shoulders for the average person. That just looks kind of odd, because even unfit, thin, or fat people should have something here. And if your person is extremely muscular, that's going to be so much bigger. Like if you ever watch those animes with those really buff guys, this type of muscle, fun fact, is obtained through a specific exercise called shrugs that my husband educated me on. But that's just about the only way to get that muscle very large. So I have a couple of those beanpole people here, so you can see the breakdown of the shapes. A little bit simpler than I've been going into, just for the sake of those who need a little bit simpler explanation. You got your circle joints, you got your bean-shaped bodies, poles for legs, poles for arms. I have mitten shapes that I used to create the hands, and little like D shapes to create the fingertips and connect them in the middle. The most basic way of drawing feet is through drawing the feet kind of like a Converse sneaker, I found, where the toe is separated from the rest of the foot. You can see here this toe has like little toes on it. So I'll also let y'all take a look at that for a minute if any of you guys need it. And I'll have some links at the end with some helpful tutorials of stuff that maybe I didn't go over, or if you need to review those as well. And then this is my favorite tip, because this is one that I don't see people reference very much, but it has been the most useful tip I've ever found for anatomy in my life. So you got the big muscle here representing the bicep. You have the little circle here representing the wrist. Draw a line between the two and then a halfway point line, and that's where your elbow would be for a bent arm. So I did several examples here. So you got a very acute angle, which for those of you who did not take geometry, that's a very narrow triangle. You got a very obtuse or wide angle. So again, bicep, wrist, line between the two. The halfway point is about where your elbow should be. And then you draw from there. Bicep, wrist, line, elbow. And here we are at a 90-degree angle like this guy over here. And you got bicep, wrist. Draw a line between the two. And then draw a halfway line there. And that's where your elbow goes. Alright? So like this. See how natural that looks? But showing bent arms is one of the biggest things that I struggled with until I found a tutorial that mentioned that. And I couldn't find the tutorial to reference. And I wanted to make sure to talk about it because that is like major lifesaver for bent arms. And the same rule can be applied to bent legs. Like you could have hip, ankle, line between the two, knee, and boom, leg. Okay? That is super duper helpful, and I hope everybody else agrees. Also, please admire my little guy. He has a happy face. And the last part on bodies I'm going to show is those diamonds that I was talking about. You got a diamond bicep, which this one's in profile because of the turned angle of the arm. You got a diamond for the elbow. You got a diamond for the wrist bone. And then you got diamonds for the knuckles. And I just did several examples here. Alright. So the last part I'm going to talk about is everyone's bane of existence, the hands. So does anybody have any questions thus far? Yes, let the bodies hit the floor. Ugh. Ugh. Hi, Turd. You've been quiet. Thank you very much. somehow melted into the couch. This is probably the biggest crowd that my Twitch has ever had, so I'm pretty excited. I'm happy to have you guys here. Alright, are we ready for the hands? I know a lot of people don't like drawing hands, but that actually, if realism is my specialty, then hands are probably my, I don't know what there is better than specialty, but I've actually won 2 different awards for drawings I did of hands when I was a teenager, and that's just from studying my own hands. These days I like to avoid the little details of hands, like knuckle wrinkles and stuff like that, but I still love drawing hands. So again, showing off with a little drawing of a hand. And I don't really have any tips necessarily to break the hands down into. I just drew a bunch of hands here, and so I guess the easiest way to break it down for me is this little mitten shape. You know, some tutorials will say to just use a rectangle, but that makes it really hard for me to figure out where the thumb is. So I like to do a little mitten, like that. And that way I know about where the thumb goes, because this should be the bottom knuckle of the thumb. So you draw that, and then from there, your thumb can only go this way or this way. Your thumb's never going to go back this way or anything like that. Then you can take this part, square it off, and do your 4 fingers. And hands have different shapes as well, not nearly as much variety as facial features, but you know, most people's hands go up and then across like that. You got a rough rudimentary hand. I'm also going to cover feet because that's something I've only recently learned, so don't call me an expert, but I figured some people need help with that as well, because feet are considered just as tricky as hands to most of us. But you know, you got simple hands like this one up here, where it's just dainty, delicate fingers. And it's up to you to include if you want to do like the extra wrinkles of fattiness there and there. You would have some there. I don't like to include all those little details. I've spent a lot of time doing details like that, and it's usually not noticed unless your hand is the centerpiece of your work. So I just like to do fingernails because I love drawing fingernails. And a small tip with fingernails is they don't go flat out like that. Not usually, especially if they're fake. They go up and then back down. Like that. And if you have long fingernails on your character, don't forget about the fingers facing away. This part will actually be kind of hollow. If you've ever had fake nails before, you know. This part here is darker, if not a totally different color, than this part here. And that's just because of lighting, shape, so on and so forth, because this is concave, this is convex. And, you know, you can see the little lines and details here. And, you know, after you do shapes like this, you can expand a little bit into stuff like this, where each joint is an individual sausage type shape, and that can help you figure out the joints. I found some people prefer to do only 2 bends of the finger, like that, because it's less detailed and it's easier for them to wrap their head around. Other people prefer to bend all the joints. Just remember, your fingers have 4 bones, like this, but they only bend in those 3 places. So this part down here is the knuckle, but these are knuckles too. This is just the immobile bone down here. And that is also why there is muscle and fat tissue in that area, is because it's protecting a bone. Basically the root of your hand. And I'm not going to get too much into fingernails, but if you do want to draw fingernails on a character, look up things like manicures and stuff, and that'll help you learn a lot about the different shapes of nails, real and otherwise, because short nails look very, very different than long, which look very, very different from natural, which look very, very different from masculine hands. So, never forget that while you can do hand shapes like this, this area down here realistically should still exist, because that's the palm, the outer palm, that comes out when you close your hand in a fist. So the box is alright, but it's more realistic if you include this part down here. And you got your knuckles, like that. And the knuckles can lead down into like veiny things. Don't ask me technical terms. But like on the back of a Mickey Mouse glove, those lines, they represent those muscles, which are on actual fancy gloves, but that's what they kind of represent to me. You got your thumb. When I was in dance class, I was always taught, keep your thumb in. Don't show your thumb while you're dancing. For drawing, I consider it the complete opposite. If the thumb's not there, especially at an angle like this, to me, that hand just doesn't look as complete as it does with the thumb. So, for drawing, I say keep the thumbs out. Keep them visible in some way, shape, or form. I think it just really adds to the drawing a lot. Especially if you're going to have something like a fist or a spread hand or whatever. Not much other advice I can give with hands, but with feet, I have found that this shape right here is my best friend when it comes to breaking down the shapes of feet, because I found this in a tutorial and I think I have it linked. This part right here, that's the toes. This part right here, which is like the tongue of a shoe, consists of the bottom of the foot and the top of the foot. And it ends up here, right about where the foot would lead into the leg. And then you also got the ankle and the heel. And these cut up so that you have space for the leg. Okay? I did that shape again over here to break down this foot. And I did most of these drawings in Procreate, which is why they look so silly. I didn't really sketch them out, I just drew them freehand. But you got this foot where the front toe, the big toe, is up slightly, and the rest of the toes would curve down. So like from the front, I don't like that. From the front, it would look something like this. For this part's in shadow, you got your big toe, and then your other toes leading down. And so I wanted to break that down, and depending on if you're looking at the foot from the outside or the inside, you will be able to see the arch of the foot. On this foot, it's the left foot facing away from the camera so you can see the arch. This foot is the right foot. You can tell kind of because of how it's angled that it's leaning away from the body. That's how you know that it's the right foot. And this foot, the right foot would not be able to curve like that at a natural angle. So again, you got your toe, and then the tongue, and then the ankle. And at this angle, the heel is either not visible or barely visible like that. And so I just kind of freehanded some feet here to show, you know, keeping those shapes in mind. How do you draw a foot? How do you draw hands? You know, you got the arch. And I used to only draw people in high heels because I couldn't think of how to draw feet without. So that's why I wanted to make sure to include that shape breakdown for you guys. More doodles there. More free-handed. Some of them pulled from drawings that I've previously done. But there's some links for you guys as well. Again, I'm going to try to post this online, hopefully in some easy to understand format. And so I think that's all I have for you guys. Does anybody have any questions or comments? I appreciate you guys tuning in. Hi, Lex. Yeah. Thank you. Does anyone want to see the cats? They've been surprisingly quiet and good for the last half. Thank you, Danny. Let's see if I can figure out how to turn it. I'm so unfamiliar with Twitch. Well, here's a quick way to do it. This is Lex. He's a fat boy. Bye, fat boy. This is Ella. She's the mama. Well, I don't think she remembers she's the mama, but she is the mama. Right, Ella? Hey, pretty girl. Can you say hi instead of running off this time, sir? Hi. Teacher. And there's the illustrious turtle who had so much to say in the beginning. Hi, Turd. What do you have to say now? What do you have to say now, huh? Are you a chatty cat? Are you a stink brain? Are you a stink brain? Oh, there's little Gray. She's the shy one. Hi, little Gray. All these guys are related. You know, Ella's the mom, and then you got a brother and 2 sisters. Hi, Gray Gray. Sweet little Smoke. She hides all the time, so I'm excited to see her. Lastly, we have the Queen, Minnie. Hi, girl. Hi, my beautiful girl. Beautiful girl. Yes, she's so pretty. Pretty girl. She's chunky. She's chunky. You never. And I now have a mom following me because I'm actually Mama Cat. But anyways, thank you guys for coming by and catching my stream.